Have you ever loved a book so much that you will read almost any book that spins off of that book? Because I do that with Pride and Prejudice, and I have a reimagining of Pride and Prejudice to talk about with you that is so good. It is so good. So let's get into it. Hello guys, it's Alyssa. Welcome back to the channel. Hello if you are new. I got a recommendation from one of you lovely people, you know who you are, thank you very much, to read the book that you know we're talking about because it's in the thumbnail, but Longbourn by Jo Baker. And this book, oh my god, did this book blow me away. So I have read many a spin-off of Pride and Prejudice. I read Pride and Prejudice many times. I've seen probably every movie and every version of a movie that you could imagine of Pride and Prejudice. And that never gets old. It never gets old for me. I am always happy with it. It is an obsession of mine. Precious! I couldn't believe that I had never heard of Longbourn. I never heard of this ever in my whole little existence. I mean, it's not that old, so I shouldn't be that like shocked by it, but it must have come out in this like pocket of time where I wasn't really paying attention to books like I do now, or like I had in the past. Yeah, like 2013. I was very distracted then. This is the story of the servants of the house Longbourn, where the Bennet sisters grow up. If you're not familiar with Pride and Prejudice, this is going to be a very strange video for you, but you know, maybe I'll inspire you to go and read the book and then read some spin-offs yourselves. Most spin-offs will, I don't know, or reimaginings will stick very firmly to the original plot. They are usually following another side character, but I've never seen before it following the servants and their own journey and story, and how that sheds light on the main story of Pride and Prejudice, the main body of characters. I think that I'm making some sense there. I don't know. Do I ever make any sense? Why do you guys watch me? So it's just like a really interesting look at the main story. And it is a true to the original text retelling of the story, in the sense that in the periphery, things are occurring that follow the pattern of what's happening in the text. Mr. Bingley is arriving, or the Netherfield Ball, or Lizzie going to the Lake District, whatever it is. All those things are taking place throughout the story, but they're really on the outskirts of the story. They're not framing the actual plot really in any way. And you're just having these moments in time where you get sucked back into a book that you know very well. And it's a very interesting framework to put these characters in. I think we're all very aware of Mrs. Hill, you know, from Mrs. Bennet screaming it when, you know, she's her nerves and all kinds of other things. But it's very interesting to watch this some of the younger members of the house interact with the older members of the house, and finding out more of the backstory of these characters. Obviously, this is not Jane Austen's backstory of these characters, but it does play to a lot of the history of the time, especially for working class, servant class people in Britain in, you know, the Napoleonic era. It feels well researched, and it is very well written, and it has quite the slow burn. Oh, sorry, I'm just thinking about the ending of it, and I love it so much. So essentially we are following Sarah, who is she was orphaned and brought in as a housemaid. Mrs. Hill, who's the housekeeper, her husband, who's sort of the butler of the house, this footman who comes, and there's also like a sort of more like scullery sort of maid, younger maid, who's even younger in the house. I think she goes by Polly because her name is Mary. It's been a couple of days now and everybody's names have jumped out of my head. One day this new footman arrives named James, and he sort of stirs up the household a little bit in terms of the servants' quarters. and I don't want to ruin anything because I think a lot of things get slowly revealed throughout the story that make you just ache for some of these characters. In part 3, when you get the full history of Mrs. Hill, I was like crying on the inside for her. I wanted to hug this fictional character so hard. You get this look at the antics of the sisters from the perspective of these servants. Sarah asks a favor of Lizzie one day, and Lizzie kind of just like brushes her off. And it's an interesting perspective to see them through somebody else's eyes, because you see these characters as Jane Austen writes them, and they are, you know, these magnanimous, wonderful, caring, just absolutely purely innocent, wonderful people, right? And except for, you know, Lydia, she's just this flamboyant whatever, you know. But to see somebody else's perspective of them, to see the maid who washes your undergarments, or the maid who you rely on for literally everything and you have just dumped your soul on, and she has stood there and took it, and how she asks one favor of you and you can't do anything for her because, like, why would you? She's your servant. It's been this was a very interesting read, a very lovely read. I could not stop reading it. I enjoyed this so stinking much, and I don't know why I didn't know about this sooner, but that's okay because I know about it now, and I'm gonna have to reread this. It's just so freaking good. It's so good. The way they look at the militia, the way Wickham gets portrayed. Oh, and the other thing that I really loved about this is that it talks about how the Bingleys got their money. And it's something that isn't really discussed in the main text, but would have been implied and understood that how he would have come about his money, and the you know, the slave labor that would have been involved in it. But having a biracial footman, is he a footman? I guess he's a footman that works for the Bingleys, that's named Bingley because everybody that's like born on the Bingley estates ends up being named Bingley, right? He interacts with the house with Longbourn and the servants there, and he gives you this insight into how fortunes were made by many people at that time and how they were made on the backs of others. And I thought it was a really great way to finally really take the polish sort of off of that, and really show the inner belly of how the Bingleys became the Bingleys. Yeah, I just think this is such a well-researched book in terms of just the history of the times, but also the text itself and how it weaves itself back into the text and talks about things that happen in the original text and the things it chooses to speak about in the original text. Please read this. It's so good. Please read it. If you love Jane Austen, if you love Pride and Prejudice, you have to read this. You just do. You have to read this. I figured I would also, before we end this video, just kind of give you some other spin-off sort of books about Pride and Prejudice that I think are a good time or worth your time, or just I enjoyed. I'm going to start with something sort of quirkier, and that is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I think this is funny. It is not, you know, highbrow literature at all, but I feel like it's fun. The way that Wickham gets his just desserts in this is just a good time. And anytime Wickham gets his ass handed to him in a spin-off, it feels like something is fulfilled in me. That's just for fun. That's not anything serious. That's just for fun. And then I have 2 books by Molly Greeley. I have not read The Clergyman's Wife yet. This is about Charlotte Lucas, and she's, you know, when she gets married to Mr. Collins, and it gives her a story, and you get insight into what her life would be. And I do need to read this, and this is probably moving up on my TBR. I've had this for a while, but I did read her The Heiress, which came out more recently, and this is Anne de Berg, who gets like barely even more than a few mentions, though is actually quite important to some of the driving of the plot of the story. She doesn't get a lot of time in the story, and she gets her own story, and you get to see bits of the original text, and then they carry forth into Anne's actual life. And I loved this. She's such a voiceless character, and to have her finally get a voice and to be able to live her life and to not be so under her mother's thumb, this felt good too. This felt as good as Wickham getting, you know, whatever he deserves in any of these other spin-offs. And then finally, this is one that I really love that apparently is dirty, but that's okay. And this is actually a three-parter. This is Pamela Aiden's Fitzwilliam Darcy Gentleman. This is a 3-volume book that follows the... See, like, what is that? Do I want to know? I don't know. I have to get something out to clean it. I just pulled these off the shelves. I haven't read these in years. These follow the exact text, but from Darcy's perspective. And what's interesting about this is that there is a large section sort of in the middle of the story where you don't have Darcy, and so there's this whole area where she can play and give Darcy more time to like brood and think about Elizabeth, or like do other things, get more insight into his life. What is the life of a gentleman at this time, like Mr. Darcy? What does that look like? So yeah, these were really, really good, and it was the first time that I had ever read something like that where they took the opposite POV of main character POV and redid the whole story from it. The only other times I can really think of this happening are like in 50 Shades of Grey and Twilight, but this was better than those. But these are worth your time. If you love Pride and Prejudice, these are worth your time to have it from a different perspective. It's really bothering me that this cover's so dirty. I don't know if that's like makeup. Like, what did I do? It's probably very old. That's disgusting. And I do feel like the covers are kind of simple but pretty with these prints on them, all sporting like gentlemanly things. But yeah, these, please pick these up. Definitely pick these up. And if you just need some fun, zombies. So yeah, that's everything I had for you for this review. Please pick up Longbourn if you're a fan of Pride and Prejudice. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Please tell me that when you get to part 3, your heart doesn't just swell and then break for Mrs. Hill. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, thank you for the recommendation. I loved it. Also, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Bye.
So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go, come closer next to me, trying to find another way to say this, but I think we were meant